Okay, Moira, this is your brother. You are a psychopath. I am not. I am a lawyer. You are not. I'm a legitimate college graduate. You are not. I've been over this before with you in previous recordings, Moira. Look, Moira, you and Mom are in trouble. Um, over the last, I'd say 11 years, you and Mom have committed several crimes directly and indirectly in conspiracy with third parties against Dad and me. And Dad's now dead. And it's become clear to me that at least since you entered Wellesley College, you have been a con artist. That you used some form of con artistry to get into Wellesley College. Probably transcript fraud. And that you use some form of con artistry to get through Wellesley College. And, anyways, this may be an Italian mafia thing, by the way. One of the groups you've conspired with is the Italian mafia. But you're also an employee of the CIA. And through years of experience with you now, and without enumerating the tiny little pieces of circumstantial evidence that have led me to this conclusion, I figured something out. The CIA and the Italian mafia don't work together. Corrupt CIA employees and the CIA work together. And occasionally, organized crime infiltrates the CIA with assets or low-level employees, and they do so by assisting these people with obtaining false documents. And you're one of these people. I think Anissa Toscano might also be one of these people. She went to Cornell. That's a nice school. And you went to Wellesley College, allegedly. And think of it this way. If the Italian mafia has a method by which they obtain official documents by means of fraud, which they do, fraud is, and extortion is one of the primary criminal activities of the Italian mafia. And if you obtained your Wellesley College degree in part by means of fraud, supported or facilitated by the Italian mafia, that would be one way they could get people into the CIA, right? In other words, the Italian mafia could probably create a background the way they create it, the way your background is. Whether they help facilitate your background, I don't know. But say for sake of argument that your Wellesley College credential, your educational credential from Wellesley College was facilitated by the Italian mafia, right? And that you hooked up with the Italian mafia when you lived out in Detroit. That would be one way for the Italian mafia to get assets associates inside the CIA. And of course, as all insightful people know, the polygraph is meaningless. The polygraph is meaningless, and the polygraph is meaningless for the following reason. The polygraph is as good as, witch doctors in the Caribbean throwing bones and trying to read eggs to do divination or figure out what's going to happen in the future. The polygraph, anyone who studied the physiology of the polygraph and Paul Ekman's work on facial expressions, and some other things in psychology and physiology, the polygraph only measures stress. Skin conductance, sweat. heart rate, blood pressure, respiration rate, and all the other things measured by the polygraph, those are all only indicators of stress. So if you can tell a lie without feeling any stress because you're a pathological liar, or because, like you, Moira, you enjoy lying, the polygraph is going to be no problem. All you have to do is enjoy lying. I don't enjoy lying. All you have to do is feel no stress and enjoy lying, perhaps, and you can pass the polygraph with the flying colors. So there's the reason I bring this up is there's no way to keep out people. If the Italian mafia in the United States tries hard enough, there's no way to keep people out who are working for the Italian mafia out of the CIA. So the Italian mafia must have some people inside the CIA. Now, this would be a problem in terms of how can this be a problem, right? Well, so long as the Italian mafia doesn't decide to betray the United States of America, there's only a problem in terms of it'll make the Italian mafia better at committing crimes, because the Central Intelligence Agency has skill sets that are extremely good at that make people extremely good at committing crimes, and the CIA has technological assets, skills, computer hacking and bugging and other things. They have technological abilities that if the Italian mafia got a hold of them, wow, that would be a big problem for the American society. And so here's the thing. The Italian mafia in the greater Boston area has decided to betray the United States of America to the People's Republic of China. I think they do it a lot through the Republic of Korea. They have people who are traitors to the Republic of Korea act as sort of a screen or a front for the fact that the Italian mafia is betraying the United States of America to the People's Republic of China. And that's why Dad moved here. That's why the CIA assented to have Dad move here in around 1999. And of course, if a civilian like me has figured it out, I've never worked for the CIA, that's a problem. If the criminality and lawlessness and betrayal and treachery is so blatantly obvious that I can figure it out as a civilian who's never worked for the CIA or any other intelligence agency can figure it out. That means that it's become a huge problem. And why would it become that way? Because, because of the variety of psychopath that works for the mob, the Italian mafia. See, it's not well known. Psychopaths come in different varieties or types. Martha Stout, in her book, The Sociopath Next Door, talks about this. And she classifies them into like the puppet master style psychopath, and I can't really remember the other. There's like three others. The parasitic style psychopath, and there's two others, and I can't remember them off the top of my head. But here's the thing: the kind of psychopath who just wants to get into the CIA and murder a lot of people, like that guy who got caught raping Persian women. There's some guy who got into the CIA, and he was a psycho, obviously a psychopath, and he had some weird obsession with Persian women, and he was actually raping. He raped 2 Persian women, and he had to be sent home. I read about that in the New York Times, or I heard it about on the radio at some point. And that's a different kind of psychopath than the kind of psychopath who joins the Italian mafia. Or you, Moira. You're a Clark Rockefeller type psychopath, or an Elizabeth Holmes type psychopath. You don't even really have a college degree, and you were the head of the Qualtrics XM Institute. You, Moira, are a Clark Rockefeller or Elizabeth Holmes or George Santos type psychopath. You just tell incredibly blatant lies, and your entire life is a falsehood. But the type of psychopath in the Italian mafia is different from the kind of psychopath in the CIA. And here's why that's important in this situation. A psychopath who's in the CIA, not like you, but like the guy who ended up getting caught raping Persian women, or more precisely, John Brennan. I think John was his name John Brennan, who was the head of the CIA. That shithead's definitely a psychopath. Um, ah, uh, uh, the guy with the last name Brennan, who was in charge of the CIA. From his demeanor and the way he talked, it was absolutely clear that. And I saw him on the news a bunch of times. And after about the 40th or wherever, how many times I saw him on the news, I finally decided, yeah, that one's a psycho. That's definitely a psychopath. He made it all, far, far up inside the CIA, and because he was disciplined. He's a psychopath. Now, your kind of psychopath, successful psychopath, John Brennan would be classified as a successful psychopath. The kind of psychopaths that are in the Italian mafia are not successful psychopaths. They frequently have convictions for various things. And that means the following. If you give all of the tools, or most of the tools, of how the CIA operates to the Italian mafia, they're going to use them in ways in which they get caught. A psychopath like John Brennan is going to use the tools of the trade in the CIA, the tradecraft and the technological abilities, the hacking and the bugging and etc. The John Brennans of the world, the John Brennan type psychopath is going to use these technological abilities in ways in which they don't get caught, or they're very unlikely to get caught. And if they do get caught, it'll be easy to cover up. The Italian mafia, if you give these same technological abilities and tradecraft abilities to the Italian mafia, they're going to use these technological abilities and tradecraft abilities until they get caught. It's like an addict, or someone who's such a reckless driver that they just keep driving until they crash every time. It's like giving a sports car, it's like giving a extremely fast Corvette or a Ferrari to a person who's a reckless driver who always keeps driving faster until they crash. So you and some other corrupt members of the CIA, perhaps Anissa Toscano, I don't know whether or not, I do not know whether or not Anissa Toscano was an employee of the Central Intelligence Agency. I doubt it, because she's a British national and she's married to an Australian national. So I doubt that she is an employee of the CIA. Barbara Toscano implied very strongly to me at one point that her daughter was an employee of the CIA. I'll say that again. Barbara Toscano strongly implied to me at one point that her daughter was, she basically told me in not so many words, she didn't directly say it, but she implied it through a series of conversations, that Anissa Toscano was an employee of the CIA. Given that Anissa Toscano is A, a British national, and B, is married to an Australian diplomat, at least according to Barbara Toscano and Mom. I've never met the man, nor have I ever met Anissa Toscano. Based upon those facts, I would say it's unlikely that Anissa is an employee of the CIA. But at one point she may have been. And she's gone rogue by, becoming a national of a foreign country and marrying a foreigner, and et cetera, et cetera. Regardless of whether she is or not. If she was, and if she was, bad on Barbara for implying it to me. You shouldn't do that, Barbara, if you did that. If it was true that your daughter was an employee of the CIA, you really shouldn't have done that. That's probably a crime, Barbara. Anyways. But you're a grifter, Barbara. How many people have you gotten murdered, Barbara Toscano? Because you're a grifter. I wonder. How many people besides my dad have you assisted or conspired in getting murdered? How many people besides my dad, Barbara Toscano, the grifter, have you played a role in getting killed? I wonder. I bet it's a number greater than 10. Anyways, assuming for sake of argument that Anissa Toscano is a traitor, and she probably is. And knowing that you're a traitor, Moira, and that you were employed by the CIA, and you're also working with the Italian mafia, because that's what corrupt CIA officers do. There's an analogy here, between corrupt police officers who work with drug dealers and corrupt CIA officers who work with the Italian mafia. So there's a parallel there, a perfect parallel there. Corrupt cops work with drug dealers for the money and the drugs, and to sell the drugs for money. And corrupt CIA officers work with the Italian mafia for the contract murder and the money. Anyways. Obviously, one of the things that you and other corrupt CIA officers would do is, or employees, you'd give all kinds of abilities that the CIA has to the Italian mafia. And based upon my previous description of what psychopaths are like, they would keep committing crimes with these things until they get caught. And I think they've done that. Because the Newton police are so obviously working for the Italian mafia at this point to cover things up. It is ridiculous. And I'll give an example. On May 4th of 2026, excuse me, on May 5th, I'm sorry, I got the date wrong. On May 5th of 2026, the Newton police arrived at my residence. All right. On May 5th of 2026, the Newton police arrived at my residence in the afternoon. And they had a false pretext upon which to be here to talk to me about phone calls I had made to Arthur Kelly. And now, after the Newton police had left, I discovered someone had hacked into my phone, and on the phone log, there were phone calls to Arthur Kelly's number on May 4th at it said 10:28. I don't know whether it was AM or PM. I got to go back and check. But I didn't recall calling Arthur on May 4th. I called him in late April, like the 27th or the 27th, whatever, the last week of April. And so they were here on a false pretext. Because if my phone calls to Arthur Kelly had been urgent enough, if the content of my messages had been threatening in any way, and good enough for a false pretext for a police response, they would have been there. They would have been there by the end of April, not on May 5th. And someone hacked into the phone to do it, which is, by the way, that's a high degree of technical skill for a bunch of criminals, the Italian mobsters, the Greek mobsters working with the Newton police. So they were here on a false pretext, and they kept me outside, away from the view with my back turned, and out of view of the unsecured front door of 10 Fairview Street for about 45 minutes, I would estimate. Half an hour, 45 minutes. And they even had paramedics here to not so mildly threaten me with kidnapping under color of authority of a psychiatric hold, even though I was demonstrating no indicia of mental illness. Nor did any of my phone calls to Arthur Kelly demonstrate indicia of mental illness. I was mean and I yelled. But I explained in very direct terms to Arthur Kelly, look, one of the rackets that the Italian mafia has run in the city of Newton and in Andover, Massachusetts, obviously, has been to steal gallium nitride radar, give it to the Chinese, sell it to the Chinese, which has changed the military balance of power over Taiwan, and the Chinese will take Taiwan. And what you did, Arthur Kelly, to me, that resulted in the destruction of my life and ultimately the murder of my father because I couldn't protect my father, what you did was you, in a small way, played one small part in making it possible for the Chinese to send the USS Ford to the bottom of the Pacific. And I said, when the USS Ford goes to the bottom of the Pacific, Arthur, if that ever happens, you, Arthur Kelly, will be partially at fault. You fucking idiot. I swore at him. But when somebody plays a small role in a conspiracy that may result in the USS Ford going to the bottom of the Pacific, I get very, very upset. I get extremely upset. So I swore at Arthur. And the Newton police were here to intimidate me over those phone calls. Which means they are openly working for the Italian mafia, who has betrayed the United States of America. These police officers wear the American flag on their shoulder. And they are openly intimidating witnesses in full uniform while carrying their service weapons. They're openly intimidating witnesses against the potential witnesses, against the Italian mafia in a racket that involves betraying the United States of America in an incredibly treacherous way regarding highly classified military technology. That's insane. And they're doing this on behalf of the Italian mafia. This is fucking insane. What does this mean? This means the fact that this event happened means that the Italian mafia has taken the skills that you and perhaps Anissa Toscano gave them and other corrupt members of the CIA gave them. And they have been so reckless and so blatant in the use of those tradecraft skills and those technological spycraft skills, whatever they are, hacking mainly, and hacking into people's cell phones mainly. They've taken this skill set and they have committed crimes so blatantly and so openly and so recklessly that they are caught. Even if you can't prove the hacking, you know the Italian mafia did it, even if you don't see the malicious code. This is called the hedonic treadmill in psychology. In psychology, this is called the hedonic treadmill. And psychopaths like John Brennan don't suffer from the hedonic treadmill or the same kind of hedonic treadmill as the kind of psychopaths in the Italian mafia. The hedonic treadmill is when you do something bad or when you do something and you need more of it. For instance, you, Moira, are a spendthrift. You spend too much money. You steal money. Every time you steal money, Moira, you probably need to steal more money the next time. And you need to spend more money the next time. This is why you are wasteful of money, Moira. And I am not. Alcoholics who are like this, who are on a hedonic treadmill, every time they drink, they got to drink a little more. Drug addicts, it's like every time they do some drugs, they got to do a little more drugs the next time. I am not on the hedonic treadmill. You are, Moira. And so is the Italian mafia. Oh, and by the way, to jump back to the witness intimidation by the Newton PD on behalf of the Italian mafia, while I was being distracted by the Newton PD in the driveway of 10 Fairview Street, out of view of the unsecured front door of 10 Fairview Street, and with my back turned, and I was distracted for about a half an hour to 45 minutes, someone put something in my food containers in the house, the food in the house. It was at least in the instant coffee that was poisonous in some way. I think it's bromethylene, a rat poison, because it wasn't like cyanide. I mean, I've been poisoned with cyanide, I think, and definitely I've been poisoned with arsenic. It didn't make me feel like the things Mom has poisoned me with. Heart rate and aches all over, increased heart rate, feeling of pain in the heart, and aches all over the body. It made me feel anxious and jumpy. It felt, well, I've never taken amphetamines, but I think it gave me sort of an amphetamine-like effect. And I became really agitated. And I called up and I left Mom like 80 messages, yelling at her on the phone, calling her a murdering, this, that, and the other thing. Actually, I screamed at Mom and called her a murdering bitch. But she is a murdering bitch. Mom is a murdering bitch. So, that's impolite but fair. She murdered her husband for the money. So, those words fit. They're impolite, they're unkind, but they're true. So whatever they put in the coffee was designed to do two things. It was designed to make me appear mentally ill and then kill me. Unfortunately, I figured it out. I was like, holy crap, there's something in the coffee. I immediately stopped eating or drinking out of any food containers that were open when it was Rich Bebo who was in the house. When the Newton police were leaving on May 5th, I saw Rich Bebo walk up to one of the police rather aggressively when they were leaving. And I think Rich Bebo was expecting the paramedics to take me away on a psychiatric hold. And Rich Bebo approached one of the police officers with such speed, he was walking towards the man quickly, and he got so close to the police officer, it was obvious that in terms of body language and social relationships from the body language, it was obvious that the social relationship between Rich Bebo and the police officer was this. Rich Bebo is in charge of the police officer, not the other way around. Rich Bebo tells that police officer what to do because the police officer was not concerned for his safety, and Rich Bebo's speed of approach and his body language was very aggressive. Police officers don't put up with that shit off civilians. They do not allow civilians to do that to them unless the civilian outranks them in some way. So Rich Bebo outranks in some social way or in some other kind of organization. Rich Bebo outranks that police officer. Either A, in the Freemasons, or B, in the Italian Mafia, or C, in both. So Moira, from these facts, I can infer that you are in extremely serious trouble with the law. Also, the poison didn't work. I'm still alive. I figured it out. And also, here's a little cherry on top. 10 hours before the Newton police arrived here on May 5th, 2026, I emailed the Inspector General's office at the National Security Agency regarding Forrester research. The email address is ighotline@nsa.gov. I emailed the NSA to say, hey, my sister, George Forster Colony, Elizabeth Brady Witherspoon and Eric Witherspoon and Rajesh Srinath, they're killing everybody who knew about the Rebecca Becky Stein profile on LinkedIn created by Ann Jackson. And it was obviously a false profile created in furtherance of Ann Jackson committing espionage on behalf of a foreign power, probably Israel, state of Israel. And 10 hours later, the Newton police are at my door, and I'm being poisoned the next morning by probably bromethalin that's in my instant coffee that was placed by Rich Bebo. So yeah, you people are guilty of espionage and treason, most definitely. So I don't know what y'all are going to do, but you're in serious fucking trouble with the law, Moira. And some of you are going to be lucky if you don't get convicted of treason and espionage and end up being sentenced to death after a penalty phase and being executed at ADX Colorado after exhausting your appeals. So takes about 10, for a death penalty case in treason and espionage, probably takes less than 15 years. Normal death penalty case takes about 15 years to exhaust your appeals. This sort of case, probably 10 or less, maybe 7, which means if you're indicted in 2 years, means whoever gets the death penalty's got about 9 years to live. If you're indicted in about 2 years' time. Moira, you're a fucking idiot. And the Lord will not have mercy upon your souls. I'm sorry. Normally in these situations, I think it's appropriate to say, may the Lord have mercy upon your soul, but he will not. You and George Forster Colony and Eric Witherspoon and Elizabeth Brady Witherspoon and Eric Witherspoon, did I say his name already? Jeez, I'm tired. The Forrester Five, as I call them, George Forster Colony, Elizabeth Brady Witherspoon, Eric Witherspoon, you, Moira, and Rajesh Srinath, and Ann Jackson, now deceased, so it was the Forrester Six. And the Italian Mafia